We're good to go.
Okay, good evening, everyone. We are calling to order our July 27th finance meeting. To order, let it be noted that all the committee members are here and present, including our finance director, Robert Manning. First item on the agenda is to accept the agenda as is. Do I hear a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all in favor, and could we do this by voice count now? Robert?
Sure.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that has been passed. We have an agenda. First item on the agenda is reviewing our May 25th Finance Committee meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of accepting our committee meeting for May 25th, say aye.
Aye.
That passed unanimous. Review of the June 8th, 2021 special call finance committee meeting minutes. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes for the June 8th meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that has passed unanimous. Okay, in the first order of business under ordinances, we have ordinance 2021-30 and ordinance amending budget ordinance 2021-22 to appropriate donated funds. Do I hear a motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on those donated funds? $2,325.
I'd like to try and speak to anything. If anyone
Just,
has any questions.
I would just say we appreciate Morris Orthodontics
Yeah.
for helping with the fall baseball uniforms.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Ditto.
Yep.
Okay, any other discussion?
No.
Okay, do I hear, okay, let's vote then. Accepting ordinance 2021-30, or everyone say, if you approve, say aye.
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 Okay, that has been passed. Recommended unanimously. Ordinance 2021-31, ordinance transferring funds and appropriating funds. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Any discussion?
Is this the dredging account? We just talked about it
It
in
is.
the Public Works meeting.
Yes, it is the dredging account and the donation from the Rotary
Mhm.
Club as
Mhm.
well, kind of combine those into one.
And when you say that those funds are very restricted.
They're only restricted because the board voted to continue that in perpetuity. They're restricted only to utilize for dredging until the board votes.
There's no,
Otherwise, the
no
project,
federal or state issue with it.
right,
Right.
the
What
project
other,
that we had closed, we finalized the work, and this was funds that were left over.
And this is all of it.
That's right.
Okay.
And it was determined that that money would stay in perpetuity to utilize as needed for dredging the lake.
Right, right.
So that's the quote unquote restriction, as it were.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question, Robert. I
Sure.
remember with that fund, they also provided, and I'm not sure the note that our parks directors just joined the meeting. On Friendship Island, those rocks, what is it called? Something.
Rip rap.
Riprap.
Mhm.
Wasn't that used for that purpose as well?
It can be, yes. We
In the
haven't
past, wasn't it?
used it in many years. It's a account. I've told them in Public Works, I probably use it an average of twice a year for minimal amounts.
Define minimal amounts.
Less than 5,000. When we have a repair that needs to be made to the fountain or a bench or a flagpole on the island.
Okay, so,
My original plan, honestly, was to try to redo all of the irrigation and landscaping on the island. But as much as it floods over now and the Corps raises and lowers the water, it's, I don't want to spend $50,000 on irrigation and then on a sunny day, it gets wet.
Right.
and the riprap doesn't help that situation at all, right?
I'm not gonna say it doesn't help. I think it looks good when we keep
Yeah.
it up, so.
Mhm.
But
Okay.
that's things we can do with Public Works. I
That's
think.
more for erosion of shoreline.
Yes,
than,
yeah,
any kind of.
This was some years
flood
back, I
prevention or
remember.
anything.
Yes.
reserved that, and there was there was some debate about touching those funds because it was for that purpose. So you feel confident that you have it in your budget to be able to maintain that without,
The island?
yeah, mhm,
Yes, ma'am.
okay,
Okay.
I'm good.
And your quotes for the fountain are coming in
Yeah,
too high.
for the stone work, just the stone work is 92,000. It's the first quote we had. So
Wow.
that's up from,
Expensive
Yeah.
construction.
It is.
I'll tell you, just to give you an example, December of 2020, we had the quote for the same project at 79,000. So.
That
Unfortunately,
could be materials on.
yeah, it's just raising of,
Yeah, so that's not necessarily price gouging on the part of.
no, it's not the company,
Bidder
it's
or
it's them,
anything. Yeah,
it's them
I
saying
understand.
here, prices have increased.
Well, then I wish I.
All over the place. Yeah.
So,
Good.
yeah, that all sounds good to me. And I heard your idea about selling the bricks, and as long as you know how much they're gonna cost ahead of time and you charge.
Yeah, I think we need to make sure we make a profit on it, not,
Right.
Oh, yes.
not,
I know in that
Not
situation, they
break
had to
even.
have been verbally told a price,
Mhm.
and that price didn't end up to be good.
Right.
So,
and maybe we come up with something beside the brick. Maybe we put up
mhm.
a sponsor sign or something. I don't know. I'm up for anything.
Yeah.
Don't want to junk up the park.
Right.
Yeah, you want it to look classy.
Mhm.
All right,
Something.
any, Karen, you have any?
No, I'm good. I'm ready to vote.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, Robert, did you want to add anything?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay,
all.
so this is not touching the general fund at all. Just want to make that
No.
clear to everyone out in TV land. So it's more or less transferring from one fund to another. Okay, all in favor of ordinance 2021-31, say aye. Aye. That has passed unanimously to be recommended to BOMA. Next item on the agenda is resolution 2021-38. A resolution to carry over funds in the amount of $50,000 from FY21 Police Department Special Projects line to FY22 Police Department Special Projects line. Do I hear a motion?
Move.
Second.
Discussion. So we had this left over, Robert?
That's correct.
Why?
During, so we're still in the middle of year end and still have a little bit of flexibility on how we do things. What this is doing is giving me the authority to reserve it. Items in your departmental budget are not intended to be multi-year. I mean, that's the reason we do a budget.
Correct.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
For reasons that the police department could probably go into a little better than I, between COVID and the cost of materials and delays in other areas, they didn't have the funds really to do it this year. This wasn't sufficient. 50,000 wasn't sufficient. The intent was they knew it was going to be much longer than just a month-long project. So our goal here with this is for me to be able to reserve this funding, then utilize current year funds and to complete the project.
Well, they have enough with this to
With-
complete the
yes,
project?
Yes. Yeah.
And the training range, where is that?
I was gonna ask the same thing. Where is this at?
I want to stay clear of that.
Do you
I
remember?
think it's over by the landfill. I'm not 100% sure of that.
It is. but
Sumner
I don't-
County.
What landfill?
Not our landfill, our limb disposal station.
Oh,
Oh,
I think.
on Forest Retreat?
I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on that, please.
No, I think you're right.
I think I'm right.
I mean, there's pictures here, but it doesn't tell me where it's at.
Right.
Yeah.
I was starting to think maybe it was supposed to be secret.
Yeah,
and we're not
maybe.
supposed to know where.
Yeah, because there's no address.
I
on
think
here.
it's an oversight.
I-
Yeah, but nobody knows where it is except I know Trace.
Off the top of my head, Chief Jones, to his credit, told me, and
Yeah,
where it was not. We were worried about
sure.
securing the.
That's
Sure.
okay. We're just curious.
What's it
Find
gonna
out.
look like?
I think. Have you ever drove down Highway 70 past Toledo, you can see kind of their range off to the side. It's got a nice overhang, and I couldn't tell you the distance that you've got, but
It's
got
like
some-
targets.
So it's like a
Yes.
shooting club.
Yes.
Like
Oh.
any
It's
shooting
a
club.
training.
Yeah.
It's a training
It's outdoors.
Right.
So I guess this is to keep the bullets from going.
backdrop. They'll need a
somewhere
backdrop.
they're not
You have to
supposed
have,
go.
I know you have to have a certain amount of
People against the
distance.
cars.
Exactly. You have to have a certain amount of distance between the area and the next
Right,
close, just
right.
not just for
Sure.
sound, but obviously for travel of bullets,
Yeah.
but
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Again,
That's
this
awesome.
is will have no effect on the general fund.
Mm-mm.
It's just transferring from one year to the other, the funds that were left over.
that's correct. I probably should have mentioned that in this year's budget, I did have a conversation through, I think I told someone else that it was two negatives and we made it positive. Miscommunication from one end, and I heard it wrong. I'm not sure which, but we did budget as if these funds were spent through, like I said, through miscommunication. They were imagining one way of doing things, and I had this in mind all along, and we came out with the right answer.
Mhm.
But you're exactly right. This isn't touching this wouldn't change anything from our
Correct.
budget
Mhm.
projections.
Correct.
Okay,
Karen,
I'm good.
Rachel,
Yeah, I'm good.
Andy? Nothing? Okay. All right. All in favor of recommending resolution 2021-38, say aye.
Aye.
That has been recommended unanimously by our committee. Okay, next item on the agenda is resolution 2021-39. A resolution authorizing the transfer of $258,219.11 from the flood insurance expense account and $40,000 from the Public Works Building Maintenance Fund to the inline hockey project account. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Andy?
Yes, ma'am. These are, again, you're not affecting the general fund. It's not new money. This is getting all the monies that are intended to be spent on this project in the same account to make it easier
Yeah.
on finance.
Mhm.
Marshall had monies budgeted specifically for work at this site that may have been not directly on hockey, but like a water line and some electricity outside the park that kind of benefited the whole area. And Jesse wanted to move that money into this project also. So that's where that 40,000 came from.
My question is this going to be enough to cover any kind of contingency for the inline hockey project?
So we've had 3 change orders. We had approximately 100,000 in funds. If you count this 40 and money we had over and above this insurance amount, plus an ability to not necessarily do a whole sidewalk around the entire park. We have about 100,000 to play with. And we feel we're about out of the ground, like we've about got the site work done and hopefully reached all the unforeseen things. So we feel like this hopefully will get it taken care of,
So you-
contingency and all.
Okay,
That's the goal anyway.
all right.
Right now, even with the change orders, we are within our budget to this point.
So it's pretty much on time.
It's on time and on budget at this point.
Okay.
And in case you get any calls, the large water line going to the school should be done by tomorrow. That would have been done today, but they stopped for registration.
Okay, so there's not going to be any kind of problem with this kid starting school
No.
next week? It's next week. Wow,
I know.
unbelievable.
August 3rd.
All right. Karen,
That's good news.
I'm good.
Rachel?
We're gonna have a lot of happy kids.
Yeah. All right. Robert, do you have anything that you wanted
Not
to say?
not on this one, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
And again, re-emphasizing no effect on the general fund at all.
Right.
Do I hear, all in favor of recommending resolution 2021-39, say aye.
Aye.
That has been recommended unanimously. Next on the agenda is Resolution 2021-40. And that is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to host the TSSAA Middle School State Softball and Baseball Tournaments. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
I have some questions.
Okay.
So there, I seem to sense from some of the other aldermen, a hesitancy to believe the economic impact formulas are valid. And what formulas are you using?
This is a formula that's been used in the Parks Department for at least 10 years.
And
So if
they
anything, it's probably underestimating it.
are originated
We
from
got these from the National Sports Council,
the Nashville or National
Nashville
Sports
Sports Council.
Council. So these have been used for a long time.
Correct.
And
It's not something that I came up with.
Yeah,
It's
no,
been
I-
in place for
I mean, they're
I've seen their-
estimates.
yeah.
very, very much.
They're
I mean, I've
very
seen-
much
yeah.
an estimate, and it's hard to say
Yeah.
that you don't believe them. It's just that we know that they're an estimate.
They're an
That's it.
estimate,
Yeah.
but they are, I mean, they're pretty well established. It's like, do we also want to prove that gravity is true?
Hmm.
I mean, we can't research every formula that we use in our financial forecasting. I mean, we can't like collect data to prove or disprove every single one. It's a waste of our
Resources.
It's a waste of our city staff's
Yep,
time.
resources, yep.
And we need to,
To your point.
if we don't like this formula, then we can use a different
I'll
formula.
be happy.
And I'm sure you would be open to suggestions on what that
Sure.
might be, but it's likely to yield very similar numbers.
Like,
Any,
not higher.
any established formula that you would use. So I just wanted to say that to kind of establish my perspective is that the resistance to using the economic impact formulas is not founded.
I think the proof of the pudding is the increase in overall sales tax.
Right.
The overall
That's-
economy.
That is exactly what I'm thinking, the same thing.
Mhm.
I don't think that, well, maybe there is some resistance, but it really is just an estimate. And that's how you have to look at it. That's your perspective has to be that this is an estimate. And it could be on target, below or above, you know? And
The point is we try
Yeah, just like a
to do
budget.
things
A budget is an
to-
estimate.
to
Right,
fuel
right.
our economy.
It's
Right.
also, I think he had a good point about it being an average.
Right.
It's average for every factor too. It's average for the length of the trip. It's average for the size of the family. And I mean, if I look at 624, I could see, just to explain the hesitancy, if I look at 624 and I think about, I'm taking a weekend trip to Gatlinburg or something like that, and you tell me that I'm going to spend $624 on myself, it'd be surprising. But I think if I looked at my receipts after I'm done between
I
dinner and everything,
Yes.
absolutely,
breakfast, lunch,
Yeah.
dinner, hotel,
Yeah.
snacks, gas.
absolutely.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
I think,
Going to Walmart to get the sunscreen you forgot. I mean, yeah, you're
Yeah.
absolutely.
you're staying in a
right.
hotel and you buy the
Yeah,
Yeah.
the $18 Coca-Cola that's
Us
downstairs.
ladies shopping.
But I
And-
think that what we heard in Public Works was a question about this is what happened historically.
Mm.
I don't think that's questioning the factor. I think it's, can we look at and see what happened last year?
So, I can't read this spreadsheet. So I don't know if anybody can, probably, but I'll be jealous of them. But what do you estimate the tax income?
For just this event.
Yes,
So
please.
the estimate for direct, like dollar for dollar local tax impact was $9,974.02.
Wait, is that income to our city or is
That would be
the
city
whole
city
state?
local sales tax impact.
900,000.
$9,974. That would not include the hotel tax.
Do you have a guess on the hotel tax?
I would be misspeaking if I could estimate that. I don't have that.
I think it also depends on what their prices are, that,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
what the rates are that
Yeah.
they give the
Yeah.
teams. I mean, we could probably say, I mean, again,
I
this
can
is a-
definitely get the number of hotel nights,
Mhm.
yeah.
probably close to it. It depends on if some of the teams
Well-
use the block or not, because if we block off rooms for people and then they get a better price and go outside of
But
that
if,
block. we don't
but
know it.
even with what we have here, we've got about $10,000 estimated income.
Correct.
It's a $10,000 expense, but we have $3,000 estimated that the Civitans will.
Well, the Rotary
Gain
Club got
support.
about a $3,300 donation. The Civitan Club kept all the concessions. And then the high school baseball and softball programs at Hendersonville got a donation also, because they worked, the kids and their parents worked the tournament.
So the hotel tax would almost certainly cover like any overtime that you happen to have,
I would
I would
venture
think.
to say that would be likely.
So at the worst case scenario, we break even and we help the other people in the community.
Worst case.
I think it's reasonable to say it would push 5,000 in hotel motel tax.
Okay.
I-
So I
That's,
don't know what kind of overtime. It sounded like you weren't, like, we might have overtime, we might
For
not.
just this, it's minimal.
And that would be true for, I mean, you don't know for police and
Yeah.
fire, do you? So
Police covers it on shift.
it's not
Fire.
overtime for them.
Fire would be, I'm on shift, some overtime probably.
So that's
keep in mind, the
I mean-
5,000 I threw out is
a guess.
just an estimate. I think that's on the low end.
Mhm.
Just going off of numbers from when we were packed throughout during these months. So I think 5,000 could be as much as 8 or more, but 5 is
Mhm.
probably a really good guess.
Yeah.
So this is a 2-year contract, so next year it will be 10 grand as well.
Correct.
Okay,
It's 10 grand every year.
Well,
Well-
after 2 years,
well-
they would probably rebid it.
right, right.
This is the same amount that we paid this year when we did bid it. There was no bid this year. They came to us and said, y'all did a great job. We'd like to extend the agreement for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all were in there or not, but we also host their state cross country. We have a 2-year contract and we pay no fee for that, which I feel like is us kind of stealing. We didn't have to bid on that either.
Yeah.
We stole it from Nashville because of COVID. We did a great job. They wanted to come back for 2 years and they actually pay us for that.
Mhm.
Credit to
I would say that probably gets bid out the next time, but we'll see. Right now, we're lucky on that.
credit to how well y'all
I
do it.
think this is great. Definitely.
I agree.
Okay. You guys are doing good things for the city
Thank
and for finance. Bring us more money, Gilly.
Mhm.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, ready to vote? All in
Yes.
favor of recommending resolution 2021-40, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that has been recommended unanimously as well. Okay, next on the agenda is our sales tax analysis. That at the end, right?
Not the very end, it'll be just after that most recent page.
All right, Robert, the floor is yours on this.
We're-
It's pretty amazing to me.
We're up 333,000 over last year, June to June comparison, which is over, as a comparison of last year, we collected $2.6 million more than we collected in FY20 as a total. It is.
Fantastic.
It's mind-boggling, but it is fantastic, and it looks like we're, I don't want to say leveling off in growth, but leveling off in kind of the last 3 months as a baseline. We're collecting around 1.5 million a month. I use those months as there's no holiday, there's not a Christmas sale, there's not
Mhm.
you didn't get your tax return and spent it. That's more of a general, what, COVID-19 pending, but that's more of a
Yeah.
general month
Mhm.
for what we usually do in business.
I was just, I know I looked at you funny because I was thinking, when did the stimulus checks? start?
Stimulus checks
People-
were, the first time around would have been around April of last year, and the
Okay.
second round would have been October, I believe, of 2020. So this fiscal year would have been this, we'd have seen one of them. But that's, that's really great news. As you can tell, over last year, the last 3 months, we've averaged around 400,000 year over year. That's incredible. I hope it continues, but even as a comparison to the rest of the fiscal year, that's significantly higher. We were doing, if you average the rest out, it's around $180,000 over last year. So it's kind of it's a good problem to have. And it's, if you have to be wrong, you'd rather it be this way than any
Okay.
other. So
Yeah.
that being said, our estimates for FY22 are obviously much closer to this than the shortfall that we expected. I do have hotel motel before we move on to the others. You've got a sheet in front of you there.
Okay.
It is still
Thank you.
unfinished, and by unfinished I mean the month of June we have some uncollected. They have to the end of the month to pay without penalty, though it is requested and due by the 20th. So we're waiting on a couple of others, but that currently we are 4,000 over last year.
Is one of those the biggest one?
It is, yeah. So it's one of the more fluctuating hotels as well. However, we anticipate it being around $4,000 to $5,000 at least.
Dang.
So that'll put us 8,000 over last year and about 8,000 shy of 2 years ago.
And that's almost,
That's
that's
not
about
bad.
50% increase year over year, right?
Yes,
That's intense. And I guess that was probably partially because of COVID.
Mhm.
Had us low
right. That's
last
exactly.
year, so.
So that's really good news. We're knock on wood, but it looks like we're back on track with hotel motel and growing every month.
Mhm.
Is it, never mind, that's a stupid question. No.
All right.
No, no, in sales tax, you say June, but it's really for May.
It's for one
But-
month in a
but-
regular,
Still
But
down,
ours, June is
potentially,
June.
it would still be down from 19.
as a comparison, yeah.
Yeah.
But
But-
it's
That's
Well,
what I'm,
he said
that's
that
what-
they're
technically
still
May.
collecting funds for
Yeah.
June.
I
right.
think 4,000 or 5,000.
Okay.
yes.
Additional.
We should get at least $4,500 to $5,000 more.
Mhm.
Could be a little higher, but it's really just dependent upon
Yeah.
their activity on the months that didn't have a tournament.
What did we end up budgeting in FY21?
180.
That's what I thought.
Nope. Yeah, 180,000. Okay.
That's
We budgeted
amazing.
200
Thank
this
you.
year.
I
It'd be
like
225.
numbers like this.
So the only items left, there's 2 items left that I'd like to discuss with you. One of them may require action both of them could require action in the future, but one I would say more pressing, but that's not necessarily the case, which is the Resource Authority transfer station. I'm just going to give kind of the rundown and find out what our next steps were or should be, but to make sure that I go over all this appropriately. There is several documents here from the Resource Authority that they wanted me to share with you. One of them is that I think is very important is a pro forma, but it's their budget anticipated, not passed, but anticipated moving forward, and kind of a show of good faith in their intent here. But just so everyone's clear, the Resource Authority and the transfer station is, I don't want to say falling apart, but it is very, very old and was built, I believe, in 81, if I'm not mistaken, and is no, 91, excuse me, sorry.
And that's not old.
Well,
that's
no, it's not,
What in the?
but for trash, it can get old real quick.
Yeah.
But
And
the line there to try to dump stuff there is like hours long. right?
yes, it is, for the transfer station, they're
Yep.
built to hold around, in 91, they estimated around 350 tons a day. And they're currently doing somewhere between 600 and 700 tons per day in the peak times. Obviously, in some cases, doubling what they're really built to hold.
The place in Gallatin has lines like that?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
my husband had a
Oh,
compound.
I only
Yep.
been once.
It could be
last
hours.
year and it was.
Hours.
So
Yep.
you can
Not like
see,
that for
you can
me,
see
but-
why they're really hoping to
Mhm.
expand here. They have several acres adjacent to this property that they're wanting to go out to borrow and build a facility that can not only
Thanks.
Andy.
keep up with the growth we're experiencing in this area, but also take on maybe Hendersonville in the future if needed, or if not, then definitely handle growth well into the future and not have to worry about this
Mhm.
30 years from now. That being
Yeah.
said, where we are currently, I wish I had drawn something on here for you to visualize where they anticipated, but tons per day, somewhere around that line right there does sort of delineate where their max is, and they've kind of
Oh.
exceeded that every year since 2016.
Mhm.
That being said, it can cause so many issues, but the long and short of it is the borrowing they're expecting is around $15.5 million. The hope and the request is that the Resource Authority would be utilizing the county, the city of Gallatin, and the city of Hendersonville's credit rating, having us co-sign on this obligation, and sort of being the parent to the car loan that the child has, that scenario plays out. We would be obligated for 2/7, which per year would be around $218,000.
Well, 2/7 of the debt would be what?
2/7
what
would be
I'm
around
saying.
4 million total.
Oh, between 4 and 5 million.
Yes.
And the payments would be 218,000
Per year.
Right.
for our portion.
So
And that would be for 40 years.
yes. So for a couple other notes that I'd just like to make sure that I mention is our expiring contract for tipping fees. That has around 18 months left, could be just a little more depending on the actual date.
And we have that with Republic.
Correct. And that being an unknown and into the future, what rates will be, and the utilization of that, or potentially if we're even allowed to, if that's something they're willing to even allow us to continue to dump or to tip our trash into that transfer station in Murfreesboro that we talked about. With that going out, the timing kind of works out to where we could just as easily utilize this transfer station if we're going to assist in buying in. And part of that, this breakdown proposed here kind of gives a few numbers that I think are very relevant. Hendersonville usually does around 40,000 a year. We budget almost $1,900,000
Yeah.
per year, and with that, we already pay for it. We're already paying for that at least.
Well, if we participate with this new
Mhm.
landfill, with our tipping, would that be enough capacity to last 40 years then? I mean, would that
The size
increase
of the facility that they're building, they anticipate being able to cover at least 40 years. Yes,
even with us,
the length of the debt.
even adding new customers?
Right. If they, the intent is to potentially add us, if we chose to go that route
Sure.
in 2023, 24.
Mhm. Yeah, when our other contract expires.
Correct.
And we would negotiate with 2 vendors instead of
Yeah.
possibly 1.
And I think one thing that's really worth noting that I haven't said yet is that as far as revenue and fees that go to the everyday user, if you were to look at waste disposal on the budget, and we were to pay our revenue is around, what we pay is around 1.2 million right now. So adding in that revenue towards them, the resource authority's intent all along is to increase fees to pay for this debt and to not default. Obviously, no one goes into debt not to default, but the commitment that they've made is to cover the debt themselves. However, they do not have a AA credit rating, quite like the county, the city, and Gallatin.
Let me ask you something about the, would they be the vendor that we would negotiate with? Then wouldn't there be a conflict, or how would that work?
Well, we would, I'm not certain on the conflict portion, but yes, they would be the vendor. However, we would have 2/7 ownership in the, essentially in the.
Would we
Maybe
get
we'd
like
be
a break?
Preferred customer.
Yeah, like a break on the price, on the tipping fee?
I think that is something that would need to be sort of nailed down.
Like
in the next-
1.2 minus the payment that we have to make every year or
Right,
something, or
right.
part of it anyway?
That's certainly
how would
something
that
we can
work?
discuss.
Yeah.
I don't think that all of the details have been worked out quite yet. This
Okay.
is more of their timeline, I believe, is September to attempt to go out to borrow. So that's kind of where we're moving. Having the discussion now is to find out exactly what it is we need to, what information do we need from them? And
Sure.
is there a next
So,
step?
I mean,
Get board buy-in if we need, if we
it
want.
isn't because they have a bad bond rating. It's because they don't have one at all.
That's my understanding, yes.
And,
Or their ability to do it, the interest rate would be significantly higher,
right.
which means fees would be
So,
higher.
Yeah, so, and then, but Gallatin and Sumner County have similar
Mhm.
bond ratings to our own, and
Correct.
they're all being asked. So
Correct.
all, would be like all of us or none of us, I'm
Uh,
assuming.
I don't believe that's necessarily the case. I think
Okay.
it is my understanding that the intent is if Hendersonville's not on board, there may be some altered plans
Oh,
to
Okay,
maybe not go to quite the size. The borrowing was between 12 and 18 million, 12 being their
So-
lowest bare bones, 18 million being the spinning rims. That's the nicest that they
the
can get.
Taj
other
Mahal.
people are
Yes.
already
Of trash.
dumb.
Trash.
I always say,
Other
I always say
people-
skip the spinning rims. And I'm saying don't spend too much time. on it.
The other Gallatin and the county, are they already on board, or? 'cause
Um,
my thinking is like, I don't want to do it if they're not gonna do it, because I don't want to be on.
Right.
I
the
totally
hook the whole
understand.
thing.
They're currently utilizing them as well, so it's in their best interest to be
This'll-
on board.
Because this
Yeah.
will keep their rates low and potentially our rates low, and it also protects the investment we're already making, and it protects our
Because we do pay.
future potential use over 40 years.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And landfills are not gonna go out of, they're not gonna suddenly, we don't need landfills, so
Right.
nope. It's always gonna be a demand, so they can raise the rates and cover this debt.
Right.
The chances in defaulting are,
Exactly. I certainly wouldn't want to speak specifically for Gallatin or the county, but if just knowing what I know and utilizing them, it's kind of in their best interest with all of the growth that they're experiencing now, but the growth they're anticipating, knowing that they have a station that can handle that growth is sort of instrumental,
So
is
this-
paramount.
this seems so clear. What are the negatives that I'm not?
I think the fear is futuristically, if economic conditions were not to continue in the manner in which they are and the growth we were
And
not to
people didn't need
experience.
landfills.
Well, that's,
I mean,
you're right. You're
Yeah.
right there. I think it's just the dollar amount. Like
it's just the.
committing to
yeah.
that at the same time, the uncertainty of the future.
And this
um,
won't impact our bond rating or our ability to borrow if
Not-
we have an emergency.
In my opinion, no. Not only or is it shared responsibility, but having four entities splitting this, the amount, I mean, I shudder to say this, but the amount that we are borrowing for at around what would be 4.4 million on the hook for is, by the time we've made payments, it's not going to affect our debt ratio at hardly at all.
It did surprise. I
Unfortunately.
guess the only thing that kind of does surprise me is that they would finance it out 40 years.
Right.
I mean,
It's
I
like a
can't believe I'm
mortgage.
gonna say this, but 15.5 million doesn't seem like
Mhm.
enough that would it take 40 years to,
I think it's scale. I think it's our budget being 60 million versus theirs being significantly smaller. 15 million
Right.
for them is
of course.
they're not able probably to take on a payment of about
What is there?
I'd say 2.2 million to try and get that down to 15 or so. But-
Right, because their budget
Yeah.
is less than 10 million.
Right.
Okay, tell me what that note, what that bond would look like. Would it be Hendersonville,
2 cents.
Sumner County, Hendersonville, Sumner County, Gallatin?
And who else?
The
And
resource.
would
Okay,
they,
the resource.
would they be on it too? the
Resource
Authority.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so there would be four borrowers,
Mhm, mhm.
okay? And would they actually put a lien on the property and the facility? Is that how they do it? Is it like a mortgage? Like they would have a lien, they would be the lien holder
issue-
to that property?
That
Or
that
are they
facility?
issuing bonds?
they're issuing. I'm sorry. Hang on.
I want to just, I just.
No,
wanna
you're
know the
fine.
Mechanics of exactly how that would
Yeah,
work.
I,
You know, is
I
there gonna be
misunderstood
collateral?
that.
I've got my
involved?
own personal notes here. And so
Mhm.
they are issuing bonds.
so there's no collateral.
So
on
it's a
That's right.
municipal bond, right?
That's correct. Personal notes here.
Okay, so they wouldn't be putting a lien on that property or
No,
the
They
facility?
would not. I just didn't
Okay.
want to answer if I wasn't 100%.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand how it would work,
Yeah,
the mechanics of
because
it.
bonds don't have
Not, yeah,
collateral.
No, you're correct. And 15.3 is the actual borrowing, is the actual bond that they'll be going out for. And 1.65%, that's the percent that they're expecting.
1.65.
that's
Mhm.
great.
Yeah.
Right.
Still it's to be this late in the year and still getting,
Yeah,
That includes all the closing costs too, right?
that's all inclusive cost.
Okay. 40 years. And then the total payment is around 767 a year,
Correct.
total
Mhm.
for everybody.
Mhm.
And our share is about 200,000 of that?
277.
How much?
It's
218,000.
218,000.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
That's right.
218.
That's the formula.
Is that wrong?
219,000 first year. And then-
Okay.
Mhm.
Right. And then it goes, yeah.
Oh. But right now, we're not taking action.
Not tonight, no.
All right. This is a
I wanted to,
lot to absorb.
it is. And
Yeah.
it's something for everyone to think on. My
What if
real
we-
hope tonight,
Okay, what if we don't do it? What would be the,
well, that's what I've kind of asked myself here recently is
Mhm.
what if we don't do it?
They would get a
One-
higher rate.
That's right. They might through one of the more recent discussions that we've had, they may scale it down a little bit and maybe not build the Taj Mahal. Maybe they go closer to the 12 million borrowing and Gallatin and the county are the major portion of that. that's the case and we were to utilize it, I would shudder to think the price per tonnage that we would need to pay to be able
Yeah.
to utilize.
I just
Yeah.
want to be a devil's advocate, you know, I
Yeah,
want,
no,
I want to
it's a
know
great question.
if we have several options here.
Right,
If
It's
we
not
need
just
to use
option
it-
A, it could be option A, B, or
Right.
C,
right.
and then we could all figure out.
And one of the things that
decision.
we had explored, and I don't foresee this as being our option, but I threw out the question, playing my own devil's advocate, to say, what would happen if we just lent you the money ourselves? And you paid us back over whatever period.
The
you
whole
know,
thing?
40 years. No,
Or
no, just our
or
portion.
2/7.
Just our portion. And it's not something that I foresee us having the cash to be able to do at
Right.
4.4 million.
Right.
But I could see the other entities, possibly the county, having that in the budget to be absorbed. So I threw that question out, and as a cost saving measure, that may be, to your question, what if we don't do it? That may be something that the county may be a little more, have a little more ownership in. If they're paying on the front end and they're not paying interest at let's say the total interest is 3.4 million over the 40 years.
And I'm not suggesting that we don't do
Right,
it. I'm
right,
just,
right.
I want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly.
No, I,
And then,
You know, the
As
other
you
thing
should.
we haven't said out loud, I don't know if you guys have thought about it, but if we switched to the resource authority, then our trucks don't have to drive
All the way.
mhm.
and all the way back.
Right.
And they're gonna be sitting in line no matter which one, but maybe if they're at this one, like, you know
you mean
how when,
Waste Pro trucks?
or whomever our contract is with
The tipping.
over the next
We
several
do
years.
Republic. for
Well,
tipping.
Waste, oh,
Republic
Yeah.
does our tipping. currently.
Yeah, we
but
send,
Triple
we have
A.
to use their facility, don't we?
but our
Mhm, that's why.
contract is gonna end for the tipping contract.
Sure.
So we could switch here regardless of who's providing our garbage service, right?
Yeah.
But doesn't
Mhm.
Waste
And
Pro
then
go to the tipping place?
So
We don't,
they go to wherever we send them. They go to whichever transfer station we tell them to go to currently.
yeah,
We
Republic
send them to Republic.
trucks don't do the transfer. What doesn't Waste Pro go
Waste
directly?
Pro goes to the transfer station, but when our contract with the transfer station, which is owned by
Yeah,
Republic,
exactly.
ends, if we decide to send Waste Pro to this transfer station,
Mhm.
they don't have to drive as long when they,
Then we
and
would have
just
to
like how
renegotiate the Waste Pro contract.
at the
That's right.
current Waste Pro, at the current transfer station, Nashville trucks get dibs. They have a separate line. So
Mhm.
maybe our trucks could get dibs if we help finance this.
possible.
I mean,
And-
that's a
and it's-
separate conversation.
Exactly.
We're
That's,
not even using them right now.
I
but-
think that's kind of my, that's my feeling on one of the reasons I knew we weren't ready to take action on this
Right.
either, is I know there are a lot of questions that
Sure.
need to be answered. And
Mhm.
I don't say this in a negative way. It's just an unfortunate timing between Public Works and some changes that were,
course.
you know,
Yeah.
and we're all trying to work this from multiple angles. And
Why is there a deadline of September?
I don't know that that's necessarily the deadline. I think the fear is with these kind of numbers, interest rates could increase. I think it's also the pressure that they've got right now, the amount of tonnage per day that they're witnessing is putting a sense of
Astronomical.
urgency.
They need to
Yeah.
start.
It's exactly right. They're putting it's putting a sense of urgency on them.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering if they had just run out of space.
And
they- like-
I believe the facilities, the general shape of the facilities that they have currently kind of gives them a sense of urgency as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
that it
Okay,
won't
to
last
what
much
Rachel
longer.
said about the distance, I mean, that makes sense.
Right.
But I didn't realize that Waste Pro sends it to a Republic truck and the
No.
Republic sends it down
My
to
Republic
Murfreesboro.
Station.
truck, the place where they dump it is
Okay.
owned by Republic.
And then they send it to Murfreesboro?
That's right. That's where it's final.
Okay, I didn't realize there
destination
was
is.
like a two-step process.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
I
then.
know. And so this would
I don't
be
know a
a
whole lot
one-step
about
process.
transition.
No,
But
because it's still transfer
They'll still
station.
transfer to a different landfill.
But it's a whole lot closer. The traffic is lessened. And maybe we
It's a lot
get to
less
be front of
aggravation.
the line instead of,
Yeah.
We get booted to the back of the line.
well, the trucks.
So
from
has
Nashville have
this
their
been to
own
Public
line,
Works
and then
Committee?
everybody
Not
else
yet.
gets
Okay.
on
It'll be
the
on
other
there.
line,
Okay.
which is much longer.
Sarah and I have a meeting
Well, you gotta
All right.
have friends
later
with your
this week.
garbage,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't know if she knows this. but-
Okay, all right.
But
Yeah, I
I plan to sit
okay.
with her later this
Yeah,
week.
they need to be all over this.
They do. they
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Okay, then what's the
And then
next item?
ARP.
So we
ARP
don't have
fund.
any, are there any more discussion on the resource authority?
We're not
Okay.
taking
Not
any
mine.
action.
No, we're not taking
We're
action
just-
tonight.
Okay, then the next item is the discussion regarding ARP fund usage.
Correct. This one, I don't have a lot for you, but we have found out, and this is one that we would like to take action in the future. I think my question actually that we'll work out internally is what action do we want to take? However, we found out some good news, some mediocre news, but the 5.9 million that we're all aware of and that is awarded to our city and has several restrictions on them. But one of the things that we found out recently is that those funds, the interest that is earned on those funds is allowed to be utilized as we see fit. So there are some discussions internally about how best to handle that. And in my opinion, I think everyone would agree, it's probably in our best interest to go ahead and start drawing on it rather than to wait until we've determined how we want to spend it. As long as we set it in a separate account and never spend a dollar until the board, legally, we can't spend a dollar until the board approves it anyways, but
Right.
And they're highly restricted, right?
that's correct. But with the exception of the interest earned on that money is allowed to be used.
I
as-
didn't know
It's
that.
I didn't
not a-
either.
it's
That
not a-
wasn't mentioned in that meeting at
That's
all.
not a
No,
normal
not at all.
thing. The assumption that I always
It's
make is that the
Yes.
interest is to be used for the same purpose and or return, not don't
And so
draw.
how
interest
much
on
is the interest?
it.
If
Well,
it's at its full,
right, if it was just in our bank account, let's just go ahead and say if we never spent a dollar, it'd be about $1,000 a month. that we
Okay,
would start
okay.
Drawing. But we have 1/5 of a percent interest rate with our bank right now, but
Mhm.
there are options to invest in local government pool, invest LGIP, as they say. That's one that state ran. They offer no guarantees about. It's strictly just for investing. It's no guarantees. They're not going to sit here and take our ARP funds and tell us whether we're using it appropriately or not. But we are allowed to put that money into a very liquid
what would the
investment
rate be
account.
there?
It fluctuates. Sometimes it's in some months it's actually better to keep it in our bank account, but in some months it's up to around 1% or maybe 2%. It does again fluctuate. Right now, it's almost better to keep it in our bank. But the sort of the reason I wanted to have that discussion is to kind of get that point out and to say that our intent and kind of what I meant by internally, we'll kind of determine what action we want to take going forward and then maybe bring something to you guys if needed. But
Now,
just
we have
go
to
ahead.
use those funds prior to what, 2 years? Is it 2 years?
2024.
Commit,
December.
or at least
2024.
commit to it.
And, I've thought a lot
Right.
about this and I really wish we were moving a little faster on this.
Mhm.
I actually think that it's irresponsible of us not to give some relief for, a disaster that happened in 2020,
Mhm.
to not give relief to our economy, our citizens until 2024.
Yeah.
So I think it's irresponsible and I think that we need to be moving on this. And I don't think we've not had the first meeting on it.
No,
And
you're correct.
I've heard a lot of folks throw out ideas, great ideas. And I think that we need to very quickly move on this. And I think we need to put some pressure on the rest of the
I
board.
feel like we've been waiting. I have been waiting on the mayor and the staff to come to us with recommendations. And I think we've all been distracted by summer vacations to some extent, but
The last time I
think we
asked.
need to get focused on it.
Yes,
I
yeah, the
think
last
you're
time I asked,
absolutely
he
correct.
said, the mayor said after budgets, we'll get on it. Well, we need to get on it.
I agree.
I know
You're right.
that the mayor and I have talked about it wouldn't be anything super huge relative to what we are receiving, but giving some relief to nonprofits. And we were gonna
Nonprofits,
just send out a letter, not even like asking them what, not even an application, just a letter saying an application is coming, and we haven't done that.
We haven't
So
done
we need
that.
to at least like,
We
and I
need
know
to
you have some
give some thought
concerns
to the
about
process.
the reporting
Sure.
for that.
Mhm.
So,
But it's definitely one of the intended uses for the money.
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
So,
There are some considerations right now. So I know the state's they've sent out notifications. I don't believe we fall in this, but I know most of the municipalities have received communications that have said it will be several months before you
Have the money.
before you have the money. And I can't guarantee
that's why
that
there's
that's
no
not
urgency.
I can't guarantee that's not correct for us, but we've received that communication, and then the final rule has not, to my knowledge, been disseminated yet either. I've gotten an interim final rule, which I can use. I don't think it's going to be too terribly different between the two, but that's what we've used. To your point about nonprofits, my only hesitation was when issuing a grant being a pass through, doing the monitoring of that to ensure that
That's
they use
true.
it in a way that they
They have
apply
to
to use
report
it.
back.
Right,
And if they don't, we could have a repayment clause.
right.
So-
And we would, I'm sorry, I cut you off, but
no, that's fine.
my concern really was just the staffing and the personnel hours that it would encumber and that we would need in order to do that.
Well-
It's not to say it's impossible that we couldn't, but I think all the way up until the point of subrecipient monitoring, everything is doable. When we get into that, if we run into hiccups and everything, I think it could cause problems
And one of
with my
the,
staff.
one
just
of
not having enough
the,
people.
one of the allowable uses that caught my eye was expansion.
Right.
Yes,
Okay, expansion. Okay, I mean, I'm thinking of Mont Haven for the
Right.
expansion for part of it, maybe with the land, some land acquisition,
Right.
that maybe we could help in that regard,
Mhm.
because the city owns the building
Building. Mhm.
and the land.
Right.
right.
So why wouldn't we want to expand with some more additional land capacity for the expansion of their program?
Right.
See, I
Not
was
sure if
thinking
land-
if they got the land, the way I read it was we could help them build.
Right.
But not.
I don't
buy
think we
the
can do land. I
land.
don't think we can do land acquisition, but I think you can
Build.
use
Build.
Or
an addition.
additional
yes.
facility.
That is exactly right. I remember this
Because they're,
discussion. That's
the
right.
theory is that because of
I don't
COVID,
remember the land.
they
part,
need
but
more,
Yeah.
they need their art classes. They need to spread the children
'cause
and the
they're all
instructors
cramped.
out. They're
Mhm.
extremely
I
cramped.
know. I
And
know
so
they
if
are.
they had, that takes more.
Right.
So that may be
physical
one project
room.
that we can all look at.
And, you know,
Boy, but we have to have a plan.
that's my concern is that, you know, you're talking about a process. We need to be thinking about what that process is
Mhm.
and laying it out in black and white and saying, does this look doable? And if it's not, then we move on to the next idea.
I think we
So
need to have a workshop
Mhm.
where,
absolutely.
where all of the department heads come and tell us what they want to spend their money on. I mean, not their money, but what projects they think qualify, and let us
Right.
pick what
We
we.
have a nominating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's, you know, we need to look at also giving some economic relief.
To the,
or to the-
into the community.
Absolutely. And I think, again, we're
And the
being
businesses.
See, we
the
don't
small
have-
businesses, we're being irresponsible if we don't
We
give them
don't
some
have,
help with
like,
that money.
We don't have like the social services, like it says you can give it to individuals. We don't
Right.
have, we can't do that.
We don't have an
Right,
arm.
We're
to
not
do
like
that.
Nashville that
Yeah.
has social services set up and stuff.
Right.
Jesse said
Right.
that he was working on something.
He is.
So I'm
I-
not sure what he's
The mayor
done. or-
mentioned to me that we might hire somebody who could help administer this.
It
A
does, there is a
contractor.
stipulation that allows to pay for services for someone. to help-
Okay,
help
okay.
administer.
Administrator.
Yep,
But I will mention, Jesse is working on this. I know I personally, about a couple of items, have submitted some information to him about possible uses and pros and cons, complications that we would see, and best path forward if this was decided to be the use of funding. One of them nonprofit, there's a couple other areas, but
Mhm.
long story short, I think the intent is very soon to kind of come to the board, whether in workshop form or otherwise, and say, here's what we think is the best uses for it. Obviously that could, I mean, you're more than welcome to throw out any other ideas at that time or before then. But
Yeah,
The way
like
that-
not like have people
Like
make
nominated.
nominations, like
Yeah.
right,
nominate projects.
right, right.
You know.
What Jamie and I had discussed with the nonprofits and what I think was the way it read to me, it seemed to be the intent was that the nonprofits would have to show us what they
Need.
lost,
Mm.
not even their need, but
Prove
what
it,
they
yeah.
lost in the past. So we're not giving them money like to spend on a new project.
Right.
It's reimbursing
They-
them.
Right.
So then do they still have it reimbursing them? You know what I mean?
Sure.
That's not the right
We're
word.
giving them
No, it
relief
could be
for what they
That's
reimbursed.
lost.
really, yeah,
Yeah.
so
Could be,
it's
but-
kind of we're making them whole, like we were their insurer somehow.
so that's
do they need to report back what they spend that on, given that it's
in that
to
aspect,
recoup
potentially.
lost
No.
income? I think
To answer
that's
your
the
question.
only thing we're looking to do with
I see.
this.
So there
Um,
are two.
With what Jamie and I have discussed,
Right.
and then things like helping Mont Haven, that, to me, that's a different.
Exactly.
stick.
That's exactly right. So there are two ways you can do it, but it part of the interim rule goes into a more gray area that does say if you have justification for it, essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but it says if you have justification over and above what we've limited here, then that is certainly considered as well, and we may approve that as needed. That being said, one of the areas basically is you have, with regard to nonprofits, what you've said, like if they can prove loss of revenue, if they were shut down, if they were
Or
impacted,
additional expenses they incurred.
additional that past history, although these funds are really intended to be futuristic looking, they have specified that there are some sectors, if you can justify it, that we're allowed to help out. Historically, if they can show and prove hardship of some kind, then it is allowed to be used for that. Outside of that, there is what you're talking about with like expansion or other, I think there was one with ventilation that's allowed.
Right.
And something with the
Right.
utility district too.
Yes,
Yep,
yes.
yep.
Remember that?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
but they
And
have their
those are
own
the kind that I'm
pockets of
talking
money,
about with
right?
monitoring.
I don't know. I
What
don't,
did you say?
I have parts of Ward 3
Like
that
with
are, that
utility.
don't have sewers and
I brought that up.
don't
and
have,
I was
can't have more
told-
than one restroom.
Right.
I mean,
and
that's
a big
hor-
problem.
that's
like
terrible.
Right.
It's on Main Street.
on
Right.
gosh, what's it called? You know, like where Shannon's Boutique is. What's that street called?
Yeah,
That's a
Stadium
big problem.
Drive.
Oh,
Yes.
Stadium Drive.
But
Through
not
that
even
whole Old
through-
Town area,
through
they
that
can't.
whole Ward 3.
That's right. They
and
can't
to- and
develop
one.
a lot of commercial use because they're on septic.
Oh.
But
Not
I
only
was
septic, some of them
told,
don't even have
I mean, that would be huge. economic.
city water.
What do they have, a well?
I don't know. They have some type of a pump thing,
It's a well.
a pump.
That's like what
They could just
grandparents
have
used to
one,
have or
they could
something.
just have, they could just have
Really?
like one restroom there. That's why they couldn't develop a
so-
lot of that area.
So, but I was told that that's Hendersonville Utility District has to,
Well, we could,
But we can grant
but
them
we
money.
can grant them the money
but
to
they
do
got
that
their
work.
own money. They got their own.
But we could still
money
do
from-
that from our pool, for that's what we got from that meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You
We could
can
designate
grant out
projects.
to other
Mhm,
governments.
Yeah.
For, if, I don't know about, I know you can go lateral and you can punch down, as I said, but I'm sure, I don't see why it would be an issue if we were to give something to the county or something like that. I know that you can.
I mean,
go
they're
from
their
government
own
to government.
independent utility district.
Right. And not saying they're government, but just.
So they didn't get American Relief Plan money? The utility
Not from
district
ARP,
didn't?
not to my
No,
knowledge.
that's
It
just
would have been through another plan, but
Cities.
this was
yeah.
just the cities.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
They may have
I
gotten
thought they
some
got their
other.
own
Let
stimulus.
it be noted
money,
that the mayor has joined our meeting
From a previous meeting.
Which is
that went
probably
long.
way over
from a
time.
previous meeting that
kidding.
went too long.
This is what happens when we don't have a BOMA meeting to keep us.
Mayor, we're
Just-
on the,
Ladies,
we're on the
we
very
might- we
last
might
item,
push
talking about
When
ARP
you're speaking
funds.
of, if we use the same philosophy, when you're speaking about relief for small business, we could look at, what was the name of the loans, the forgivable loans?
PPP.
The
PPP?
PPP loans.
okay.
If you applied, but you were not able to get it, send us your application. Then they don't have to recreate the will. We don't have to recreate the will. We could look at their application and determine
Right.
that. And if they didn't apply for that, then they're not qualified.
Right. Right.
And that would be more along the lines of not reimbursement, but whatever, than
Like a little
than an
small
investment in growth necessarily, but more of a making you whole kind of
Right.
approach. Is that what you had in
Yes.
mind?
Yes. Absolutely.
And Robert, how burdensome?
That portion would not be.
Mm-mm.
Truly determining the criteria and evaluating applications it would not be the burden. And in the aspect in which you're talking about, it's historical. They're providing us some form of documentation to prove hardship of some kind. That would not be a burden in itself.
But that,
My fear was more along the lines of if they provided us a plan for things like ventilation and.
I think that's a whole separate deal.
It is, you're right.
Mayor,
Yeah.
just to bring you up to snuff on the ARP.
Mhm.
As you know, Finance
are.
Committee loves money.
Good.
There were several suggestions to start, I know that Jesse and you guys are working on a plan to get the board involved, maybe have a workshop of some sort, maybe nominate some projects to that extent to be able to, and then to use maybe start using those funds, if we get the blessing of the comptroller's office. And Robert was telling us we could use the interest on those funds right away.
Yeah, he found that out a couple weeks ago. It's pretty awesome.
Yes.
So
Unfortunately,
that's
it's
good
not
news.
a lot of money.
So that's kind of where
So,
we're.
okay, you sound like a government person, because $20,000 to a lot of people is
That's
a lot of
right.
money, but.
You should have heard me talking about 15.5 million. Like, why do they need 40 years for that?
That's true, that's true.
Meanwhile, the landscaping company at my house is killing me.
Yeah.
Like, $20.
Maybe after everybody's finished with their vacations and the kids in school, we can get something going on that. That's what the
That's
discussion was.
So have you talked about nonprofits?
We
Yes.
have,
Briefly.
Okay.
we have,
Okay.
and Alderman Dixon
Okay.
would like for us to extend the same kind of relief to
Small business.
businesses.
Okay,
Yep.
we can do that,
Mhm.
we can do that.
There are some defined sectors, but I don't think we're gonna have an issue. I take that back.
Especially the
Part of-
hospitality.
Part of what I was mentioning earlier is that they said there are defined sectors, but if you were to see a sector that was that has shown hardship and you have enough support and documentation to show that, then you absolutely can use these funds for that reason. That obviously the easy ones would be the hotel, motel, the restaurants,
Mhm.
some of the entertainment, tourism.
Mhm.
But if there were, say, senior citizen center or something like that, if there was a sector that doesn't fall in that and you have
Well, some like
Support.
non-food retail.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
Absolutely.
they were shut down pretty
Yes.
much.
So they probably applied for the PPP loan. And then if they didn't get it in time, then they didn't get it.
Well,
And then they
There were
could
several
use that
different
same
PPPs that
application
they
to
could
give
apply
it to
for.
us.
Seems reasonable.
There was a
And, but if
reason
they
they
got
didn't
it,
get it.
then they probably already been made whole.
Mhm. Yeah,
One way.
PPP made a lot of people
Mhm.
whole.
It
Trust me,
did.
So somebody,
Trust
this
me.
is somebody who works at a bank.
trust
You
me.
would know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, but if they didn't get it,
Mhm.
but they filled out the application, they can give us the application. They don't have to recreate the will. We don't have to recreate the
Okay.
will.
Okay.
And we can evaluate.
How did we prove that they didn't get it? That's confidential information.
That's true.
how
Actually,
do you
you can
prove
look it
that?
up online. It's not confidential.
You're right.
You can look up online and see
Okay.
who got
You
the
can
loans,
see, you
who
can see
got the
recipients.
loans
Okay.
and who didn't.
How much?
So that is verifiable.
You're right.
Yeah, with the Small Business Administration, yeah, you're right.
That's as
'Cause I know
far as
CPA on that one.
criteria,
Big one.
would we want to determine the criteria in the workshop, I assume?
Yeah.
Kind of,
Yes.
yeah.
Mhm.
We probably have to vote on that ahead of time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, sure.
Have a workshop.
No, we probably have to vote on the criteria before so we can have a
Before we
workshop and discuss it. But we
Yeah.
would still have to go to the board meeting to vote on the criteria
Sure.
ahead of time.
Mhm.
And I hate that, but I would hate for us to put
It'll
together
take a
criteria
while.
and then come back and say, well, we need this information too.
Right.
But I know you and I were at least copied on one from, where they were saying, is there anything the city can do to help us? We're financially really not in a good place, and I don't want to call
You've
out
gotten some
anybody, but
calls like that?
yeah. And this particular nonprofit, I'll tell you later, the nature of their thing, of course, it's like their whole business would have been shut down, just like a restaurant.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So yeah, we have heard from some.
asking for help.
From
and-
regular businesses?
No,
From
no,
nonprofits.
From nonprofits?
asking for help.
Okay,
And they're not
Well,
people who
that's,
receive,
you know,
who
that's-
we give a grant to annually.
Yeah,
so.
knowing that they're eligible for some of this money because of what they've heard in the media, they've contacted us.
Oh, okay.
gotcha.
Mhm.
And then we talked about the utility district.
Okay.
Now, that's allowable,
And
right?
Absolutely.
getting
But we have to
sewage.
earmark that money for particular projects, right?
We can, they've got two big projects. One of them is sewer down in West Main. What
Yeah,
we're,
see?
Yeah.
what we're
Yes.
encouraging the county to look into that project. Because the return on investment for the county is much greater than the return on investment for the city, because their property tax is higher, they get more sales tax.
Sure.
So if a piece of property on West Main Street has sewer and the value of it increases and the use of it increases, the county has a lot more to gain than we do. Is it something we should look at? Maybe. But I've been encouraging some of the county commissioners and the county mayor to.
We could chip in, but I agree with you that
Yeah, we could
that's
chip
just,
in.
we could spend our entire
We could.
grant
Yes,
and
yes.
not really touch it.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So.
That's
I-
true.
I-
Whereas what the county is
It's-
getting, their grant,
How much is the county, Kenny? Do you
50
remember?
Yeah, I thought,
And the,
at
and
one point I
Gallatin
saw
is getting like
39, but
30
I
something.
think that's wrong. I think it's changed since then. It might be 50 million.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll have to look
Gallatin's getting a
again.
lot more than us too.
Yeah, because why is Gallatin getting so much more? Because of the demographics there and their utilities?
that question was asked, I can't remember what the answer was. It was asked when the comptroller came to Gallatin.
Yeah.
County
That's
seat,
what
maybe?
I've been told. It's.
It
their
might be
demographics.
something like
Yeah,
that.
that's the
Demographics
only thing I can
and
think that would give them.
they-
What
an
did you
advantage.
say?
I said
and
county
their
seat,
county
maybe?
seat.
I think
That's
it
the
might
only
be.
thing.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why that's.
Or- That's the only thing, because the amounts were determined well in advance of, so that's the only reason I threw that out. It certainly wouldn't have had time to fill out justification of why they need more money. So.
Sure.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
I like money too. That's why I printed this page. So,
It's a good page.
That's a
isn't it?
good page,
Yeah.
Jamie.
Yeah, it is. My only,
Page.
All right.
my only last thing before we
I'm
end is
I'm ready to
just
start my
time.
birthday.
Yeah.
Oh,
There you go.
timeline.
It's just time. I know,
Yeah.
quick, but and best laid plans, but timeline of trying to get something together. for a workshop, what you all feel comfortable with.
Well, why don't,
I know.
why don't we ask the mayor and Jesse to put something together for
Don't want
kind
to do
of
it August
an
10th.
outline?
Obviously.
No,
No.
That's gotta
it's-
get behind
Let's
us.
do it after Labor
and then,
Day.
yes.
My intent was not to set a date.
Yeah, I think
know
that,
but-
I think sometime the 1st of September. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with
And then
Karen.
it wouldn't come
With Alderman
to
Dixon.
finance committee until anything that results from that wouldn't come to finance committee until the end of September. And then BOMA would be October, the end of October for 2
If we even
readings.
have a
We could
decision.
If
probably
we even got anything
A
out of
recommendation.
one
by
workshop.
then, that
We
would
could
be-
probably pass the criteria in a resolution.
Okay,
Yeah.
Because, but then we would have to, because we're gonna eventually create an appropriation, which have to be passed in a in an
and
ordinance.
so because creating that criteria through resolution doesn't actually, we may not grant any.
Right.
It's just saying if
Two
we
of them,
do
right?
this criteria,
Front
it's
and back.
acceptable.
That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is.
And Jesse did mention that you guys are gonna get the blessing of the projects with the comptroller's office as we adopt them.
We need to, yeah. we-
Robert probably gets these emails twice as much as I do, but every other day I get some explanation of what's
A new
what's
rule.
involved, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it seems to be getting more, or should be getting less restrictive than more restrictive, which is good.
Oh,
news.
that's really good.
Yeah,
This
that is
is-
good.
That's
That's it.
that's it.
And I would venture to say that, that depending on national elections in the next year and a half, that it could be, everything was fine, whatever you spend it on is good. We're good with that.
I've thought that, I've had that exact same
You
thought
could
about,
be correct.
I've also thought about timeline of spending too, because it could do the opposite.
That's good.
I move to close the meeting.
Okay, I'll second that motion. All in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
This
Again,
was a
the best,
very,
the best
very
looking
productive
committee
meeting.
on the
Thank you.
board.
Is Jason with us?
I don't think he's there. We're still going.
Somebody hit the end button.